So welcome to episode 8 of the Who Is program, brought to you by the Information Systems Community of Practice of the Project Management Institute. This series of interviews were designed to bring you closer to the lives of some remarkable project managers, which you'll hopefully find useful and insightful. On the last episode, we had Agnieszka Gasparini here, and today I have the pleasure to bring you Thomas Juli. You may know him as he's a very active member of the project management community. He's an author, trainer, presenter, and all with a strong social conscience. What you might not know is how Thomas first got into project management, or what makes him one of the most effective people I've ever met. I'm your host, Luis Chiabra, and this is my guest today, Thomas Juli. Hi, Thomas.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Well, we've just been talking about your social awareness. How do you mix someone that comes from economics to project management with a social conscience? Can we start by that?
That's good. Yes. I started. Yeah, I have a master's, a graduate degree in economics and international studies, international economics, and now I have been working in professional project management for more than 60 years. Well, the reason is there are always kind of like coincidences, some accidents, that take you along. But I have always loved to organize things, to plan things. That's to start with, something to mention at the beginning. Plus, I love working with teams. I have worked with lots of groups. I build teams. So if you know this kind of background, planning, organizing, working with teams, team building activities, it's not really that surprising that I now have been working in professional project management. Back then, in 1997, 1998, when I just obtained my PhD in international economics, yes, there was a chance actually that I would have ended up in academia, but what happened was that I just got an offer from SAP in Germany, so returned back then to Germany, and I didn't stay with SAP for a long time. Later, I moved on to startup and then into management consulting, and I'm actually still in management consulting. So that's why I got there. The economic side still interests me a great deal, no doubt, and I still consider myself an economist. But also, the fact is, I'm working in project management, and I really love it.
So you started from a big IT company, which is another, I'd say, strange mix. But you don't work on IT anymore. Basically, your company works on leadership. Is that correct?
That is correct. Let me say a few things about IT. Yes, I have been working in the IT world for quite a long time. I do not consider myself a techie, and I will never be one. But what I have learned in all these IT projects, where I manage smaller projects all the way to global programs, is that you have to understand a technical person, and you have to understand the people from marketing, from sales, from finance, etc. And a project manager is really trying to is able to bridge all these different worlds. Okay, now. Am I still working in IT? Yes, sometimes I still work in IT, but it's not my main driver. My main driver is to work actually with companies, with people who have a sincere interest in exploring what it means to become or to be a project leader, or to explore project leadership. And this is not limited to IT. For example, last year I worked for a pharmaceutical company. Then I had another consulting engagement with a company which was involved in precious metals. Now I'm working in the telecommunications. Next week I'll be giving a workshop at the World Economic Forum in Davos. So it's not really a specific industry, but what I'm interested in working is, and what people organizations are looking for is those who are sincerely and honestly interested in making a change. preferably a social change, a positive social change. So that's what that's what I'm after. Yes.
What do you think that it helped you the most in that environment? I mean, as a German, I think German in general are a bit too straightforward and process-driven,
Yes.
and you don't sound a bit like that, right? What do you think that you have that helped you in that process?
Well, I think that well, yes, we have there's the stereotype that Germans are very organized, very strict, very process-driven. No wonder there are so many. No wonder that there are so many engineers out there from Germany. But maybe it is because I consider myself a global citizen. I have lived in the States for more than 10 years. I've traveled all across Europe and worked with people from all over the world. So maybe you become more, how should I say, sensible to various cultures. But I'm not saying this is just like me, or has anything to do with being from Germany or living in a different country. It's always the individual that matters. So, but for me personally, I think that simply because I have worked and have lived in international environments, I try to be open.
So the thing that helped you the most during the process was the fact that you shared experiences in the United States and different cultures. What didn't help you? What is the thing about you that you still fight with in the project management field?
That's a good question. I mean, let me talk about myself. I think it's what always can be a challenge, and again, it's not limited to project management. Is maybe the art or the skill of listening, and that's me personally. I'm still working on this. I love listening on the art side. This is something I'm still working on to become even better, because when you become a better listener, you become a better communicator. So that is very important, especially when you work in project management. So this is kind of like a construction area I'm aware of, and but that's a very nice challenge and opportunity.
Okay. Even though that you are quite active and working in several different things in the past years, what was the last thing that you actually learned about project management?
You know what? It was 2 or 3 years ago when there was a time I had just finished a long-term consulting engagement, and I was busy, developing new business, and that stretch was a little longer than expected. And that makes you wonder, what do you really want to do? What do you want to do, say, in 5 or 10 years, and so on? Mm-hmm. And I came to the conclusion that yes, I do love project management, but I also want to have fun at the same time. And I realized, one of the key things that I really enjoyed in projects, and other people enjoy too, can be summarized with the term happiness. So I believe that if you want to become, or if you want to be an effective project manager and project leader, you have to understand that happiness at the individual and the group level is a key ingredient for project success. And so ever since I'm pursuing this happiness idea also in projects, I realized that become more, say, a flow. Things become easier. You're thankful for various things, but you also talk very openly. Say, what is it that can make us happy as a team? What is it that makes me happy? And what is it that the other person, needs to be happy? And you talk about this. And this is very important, always in the context of the project. Okay, also in the context of the project. And when you combine this with leadership and happiness, the collateral, kind of like what comes out of it is project success. So yesterday I talked to somebody, and he asked me, said, what is it that do you have any advice for, say, new project managers, or maybe even experienced project managers? And I said, like, you know what? I'm personally very interested in project success. And my hypothesis is that there can be an equation for project success. And that is leadership plus happiness equals project success. It could be a little simplistic. Fine. It's an orientation. It has it's kind of like an approach and it's an attitude. Fact is, happiness is key. It's very, very important. But we don't want to have, say, a circle, sit in a circle and we just hold hands and sing and have fun and have a good time. No, we're talking about projects. Projects should be smart. They are a time box, and you have to deliver results. This is where leadership comes in, where you need to know, okay, what's the overall vision? How do you nurture collaboration? How can you empower people so they perform? How can you cultivate learning? And at the end of the day, how do you ensure results? This is very important that a person, especially a project manager, is aware of and leads the team into this direction. And then there is the personal, the human side of a project. See, we know that teams are the heart and core, the heart and soul of a project. Everybody says that's fine. But what about the individual? I think if you only look at the team as a unit without accounting for individual needs and motivations, something important is missing. There has to be an overlap of what motivates people in the individual basis and on the group level, and what is it that made you start a project? What's the overall vision or the objectives of these projects? So these three elements, or these three dimensions, the project, the individual, and the group, they all have, say, they're motivated. There is a motivation. They have something they envision, a vision, and they have certain goals. And then all of these circles, okay, if they overlap, then this can actually spark wow projects. And this is exactly what I'm interested in. I would like to work on wow projects. That is, and want to build wow projects. Projects that make a difference, that those are projects where work does not feel like work. It's just like you can say it's fun, it's a flow, it's something you look forward to. At the end of the day, you're already looking forward to why? Because maybe the project is a lot of fun, or the topic is fun, the people, you have opportunities to learn. So there are quite a few things you can do, and this is something I'm working on. This is something that we've
I think it's amazing how you can mix things that it's quite unexpected, like happiness and a project. It seems to me that they're quite apart, but you make it sound natural. And even more, you can find someone else working at the exact same topic. What did Gretchen Rubin's book, The Happiness Project, add to you on that vision of yours?
Well, yeah, you mentioned Gretchen Rubin and the Happiness Project, which is at least the German version of it. I've been reading this book, and she's actually pursuing happiness and how everything, what drives her, what really matters in life, and she's asking very simple questions. And for every month, she has something else to focus on, which is, by the way, also something you can do on a project. And so this is just like, what does she have to say? These are the simple things, the little things that can make a big difference. Sometimes it's like, if you say hello, you greet someone, or you're thankful for the little things in life which natural. It's like it's a given. Yes, until you don't have them anymore. Okay, so maybe you are very upset about, let's say, consider your computer because it's just slow, etc. And it's just like it bothers you a great deal, very stressful, and it's just like it's a pain in the neck. And then the next day when you go to work, you say, oh gosh, I have to work with this stupid computer again because it's so slow. Well, it doesn't start at all. It doesn't work. You cannot start the computer. Okay. So all of a sudden, you don't have a slow computer anymore. You have a computer which doesn't work. And you think like, oh, gee, at least if I just had a slow computer, I would be happy. Well, sometimes you have to lose things in order to realize how happy you can be. That's one thing on the materialistic, the material side. But also, it's like what happens even from you from the inside. That matters a great deal.
Well, that actually makes sense to me. When I first started working, I started to work with a real gentleman, and that was the natural thing for me. It was to work with people like that. So when I stopped working with him, I realized that the market, the companies, and the projects weren't made up with people just like that. And it does make a real big difference. When you lose something, that's when you really noticed its value. I can identify with that. Yes,
yeah,
that's for sure. Talking about books, in fact, when I first met you, you just published the leadership principles for project success.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that? What your leadership principles are and how they apply to project success?
Yes. Well, the book was, to a certain extent, was like the outcome of a homework a coach gave me. That was what I was still working for at SAP. He's like, Thomas, like for next week, I want you to think of 10 principles of for leadership, project leadership. And then I came back the next week and said, well, I'm sorry, Christian, I only found 3. At that time, I had 3 in mind, 3 principles. And the more I was working with these 3 principles, I found another one, another one. So anyway, these 5 leadership principles for project success is the first one is you have to build a solid and inspiring project vision. That means you have to know why you start the project in the first place, what is the motivation of the project. Then you should know, or you have to know, okay, what's the overall vision? What is like the big picture, And then, of course, you have to know something, well, what are the real project objectives? But all these things, these 3 things, the motivation, the vision, the project objective, they have to be aligned with each other. They have to be one unit. If you say motivation, vision, and project, you just take the first 2 words, we have the MVP. So that means if you are talking about leadership, principles for project success, you start with having or working on an MVP for your project. That's the first principle. The second principle is nurture collaboration. We all know that the team or a team is the heart and soul of every project. But you also have to realize that you have to have certain collaboration rules. How do you want to work together? You have to agree on roles and responsibilities and accountabilities. When do you meet? Where do you meet? How do you escalate things? So this is all summarized in the second principle, nurturing collaboration. The third principle is promoting performance. It's okay that you have collaboration rules, you have the vision, but you also have to perform. So how do you get there? Well, promoting performance, you also have to realize a performing team just doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. You're going through these phases, forming, storming, norming, then performing. You have to realize that there are group dynamics. You have to build a team. Sometimes it's a little easier, sometimes it's a little harder, sometimes it doesn't work at all. So the one thing one way you can do it is you have to empower individuals and the group. You do not want to micromanage people on your team, but you have to give them the tools, the resources, so they can, they can play, they can perform. Very important. The fourth principle, cultivating learning, means that don't pretend just because you have a project plan, everything is working, as planned, as scheduled. Things you cannot forecast. You can forecast maybe a certain 1 or 2 weeks, what can happen. But there's so many uncertainties. You have to be very open for changes. Expect the unexpected. But the question is like, how can you learn from your mistakes? I always tell people, never make a mistake more than twice. Okay, because it's easy to make a mistake once, and then, but it's unless we make this mistake the second time, then we don't learn it. But the thing is, embrace, welcome mistakes. Tell them, okay, yes, we want to make mistakes so that we can learn from it. Especially if you're working in an innovative environment, and information systems is a very innovative environment. So if you think you can plan everything is certain, no. You have to cultivate learning. You have to be open for mistakes. You have to welcome them and say, yes, great. Okay, now what can we do differently? What can we do better next time? And last but not least, the fifth principle is you have to ensure results on an ongoing basis. The final delivery, deliverable is great in the project. But when I'm talking about success, it's an ongoing thing. So I'm really looking at interim results. When an agile environment is relatively simple because you have sprint results. You have releases every other week or so. So you see something, you can share it with people. It's much better than just like giving them a document to read, which they never read anyway. They want to see working software. And ensuring results is also very important. So the vision, collaboration, performance, learning, and then results. Those are the 5 leadership principles for project success. And it's not that you say, well, one principle is the most important thing. They all work together. So even when you work on your MVP, the motivation, vision, and the project objectives, you should already think of the other elements in a project, that is collaboration, performance, learning, and results. If you don't do it, it could become a one-dimensional setup of your project, and you're missing important elements.
You mentioned 2 things that I like to dig in. The first one, when you talk about vision, the way you talk about it, it reminds me of the discussion between outputs and outcomes in a project, meaning that outputs is just the deliverable, what you're building, the physical stuff that your project is supposed to be about, and the outcome is why the organizations wanted that project in the first place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way you talked about vision relates to this, it seems to me. Am I correct?
Yes. And you mentioned something very important. You say, well, why? It's kind of like why do you want to have it? A certain output. If you look, for example, at quite a few projects, we're thinking of features. Well, we want to have this feature, we want to have this functionality that's very important. So we concentrate a lot, we talk a lot about the what, okay? And we forget why we started the project in the first place. Now, for example, if you look at Apple, okay, people buy Apple products. Yes, they're great features, say the iPhone, but the other smartphones, they're functionally even better. They may be more stable. They have more features. It's less expensive, and yet people still buy the iPhone. They purchase the iPhone, and it has to do a little bit with an attitude, with a lifestyle, and Apple is able to communicate the purpose of their products, which is something that goes way beyond. And it's very important that you have to know why you start a project in the first place? How does it fit in the overall picture? You know, the one story with the time traveler who comes to a village and wants to find out what everybody's working on. So he's asking the first person, "What are you working on?" He said, "Oh, you know what? I'm, bricklayer. You know, I don't earn a lot of money, but it's just enough to feed my 9 kids." Okay, fine. Then you go to another person. So, "Oh, you're a bricklayer too?" "No. Yeah, I'm not a bricklayer, but still, this work sucks. You know, I have to build this wall over there," and it's like, okay, well, but anyway, it's enough work. And then you ask the third person, who knows, maybe it's a project manager, hopefully. "So what are you working on?" "You're also a bricklayer," and he tells you, "No, I'm not a bricklayer. I'm building a cathedral." Okay, so the cathedral is kind of like it gives a summary of the motivation and the vision. And this is the key thing. That person, there's an overlap with his motivation and vision and the official project. That person can identify with that project, and that is one of the key things. So whenever you have a project, I think it's very important that you know what this MVP is all about, especially in an IT project. Very, very important.
It's funny how all of a sudden this conversation reminds me of the same person over and over again. I just told you about the person that I worked with when I started working,
Yes.
and I failed big on my first job.
Yeah.
I was really, really mad at myself because I failed. So this gentleman comes to me and says, "That's okay. You failed. It means that you were doing something. Now, if you fail twice, I'll be on alert.
Yes.
If you fail again, you're dumb. I don't want you working with me."
Yes.
It was this simple. He saw failure as something natural. It's supposed to happen.
Yes.
In my culture, we don't work like that. We don't function like that. Failure is really a bad thing. You don't want to fail. You want everything green. Your project always goes according to plan. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. It's especially when you say you have new project managers. Of course they make mistakes. I made quite a few mistakes. And actually, my first projects, I thought like, oh, one of the key things I have to do on this project, I have to build a plan, I have to sketch everything. And it was just like back then was a waterfall project, which still was very successful. But anyway, for this design phase where we specified the requirements, for these, I think 2 or 3 months, we had like 120 meetings sessions I scheduled. So I really micro-planned everything, and it worked fine. But it was just like it's a pain in the ass. It was, and then I learned a great deal. So the next project after that, I had a different approach, which worked much better. For whatever reason, we think that we can't plan everything, and plan is worth nothing. Planning is the most important thing. This is also what Eisenhower said. And there's a lot of truth to it. It's simple. You need to have a plan. But it's not the plan by itself. It's a piece of paper, which is important, but that you think through the various elements that are important. And then you have to also make a decision how detailed do you want to go. Okay, what kind of what's the level of detail that still adds value to me and to my team. And the planning process is like you structure things, and this is why it's helpful. This is why it's necessary. If people say, "Oh, project manager, they just do the plan, the project plan, MS project for and have you," it's like, no. I think it's important that you know the various tools, that you have the skills you need in order to succeed as a project manager. But and this is, I guess, the distinction between project manager and project leader. A leader knows, okay, where to stop, where you just want to create a structure and then let people play. perform, also make mistakes, learn from them, and just innovate. Go beyond, what they think they have planned and perform. And this is like one of the key elements for leadership, I believe.
That sounds very agile. Do you usually follow just one methodology on your projects? Are you using Scrum, for instance, or do you adapt according to the kind of projects that you're managing?
I try to do whatever works best for the client for that specific environment. And for example, you mentioned Scrum. I don't consider Scrum a methodology. It's more like a framework. And then there are people who say, well, we have to do Scrum in a certain way, otherwise it's not Scrum, and otherwise it's not good. They don't realize what Scrum is all about. A framework gives you an orientation, a structure, or a foundation to work on, and you do, again, what works best for the client, for that project. And there were some projects where we had like 100% Scrum, just like the textbook, which was fun. But in most cases, that's not the case. Of course, we're not working in a lab. We're working in a real, natural human environment where you're dealing with a lot of uncertainties. And you have to know different methodologies or frameworks, and you also have to look for new approaches. That's what I'm always trying to do. So, like, yes, when I'm as a consultant, I'm going, or as an interim manager, and I'm going to a new client. Yeah, I could open the drawer and say, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. Okay, fine. It may work, but once I'm gone, that the client will just fall back into its old pattern and nothing's going to change. Or, alternatively, you empower the client to learn to do the right things. Okay, so this is, I think, much better and more effective. And to empower the client and to see what works best, because sometimes you just need a few elements, agile elements, and then you have to combine it with some waterfall approaches, and the client is happy and it works. And this is like knowing what works best. I think this comes with experience. You should not just limit yourself without a tunnel vision of this is Scrum, this is Agile. No, it's not. But the cool thing is, we talked about the leadership principles earlier. Those leadership principles, I think they're universal. No matter what project you're working on, what framework you have, it doesn't matter. Like they're fine, which is cool, which is great. The principles are, it's not like that you have to do it in a very certain way. They give you an orientation. And when you have a certain, we have to do, say, a methodology or framework, we have to know, okay, what is the structure I need, what are the principles I have to oblige, and then you just go for it and fly.
That's not a very popular view on Scrum in particular. I think basically because people find it easier to just follow a recipe. So you do a stand-up meeting, it's 10 minutes, no longer, and you just follow the rules.
Yeah.
It's much easier than faced with a particular context. How do you make it work the best for you? Now, for these people that just follow Scrum by the book, how would you advise them to see things in a broader view, and how would you advise them to adapt to their particular projects?
That's a very tough question.
Thank you.
There's not just one way to do it. First of all, it can very well be that it works for them. That's fine. But you also have to open their minds for the overall environment. You have to tell them, what is the idea of Scrum? And it's like customer-focused, customer-centric. customer-centered working. And you have to say, sometimes you just have to deviate a little bit from a certain framework to be more flexible. Because you can say, you know what, you really like Scrum. Okay, you have the fresh perspective, and you think, what can we do differently? What can we do better? Okay, so there's a continuous improvement. But if you say, I don't want to consider changing my approach, the way I'm doing things, even though it may go better, you're not following the rules, the principles of Scrum. It could be that contradictory. So you have to evolve, so you have to know what works best for the team. So it could be that in the situation at the beginning you may have dailies, the Scrum meetings, the 15 minutes every day, Monday through Friday, okay? But maybe there may be some weeks where you say, we only do it every second day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and may actually be better for the team, okay? Maybe you only want to do it twice a week. My experience is like if you have really a daily, it works best. That's my personal opinion. Sometimes it's like I don't want to go, but this is just my perspective. Maybe somebody else on the team has something to share, okay? And if there's nothing to share, fine, then we're done in 5 minutes. That's okay. So with these Scrums, there are certain things that I say, look, it's kind of like best practice, and they work fine. But again, just because they worked fine on most other projects does not mean that it's a good fit for your specific environment. So you have to be open for different approaches. And if a person, let's say Scrum Master, is not open for this, he's not doing a good job. If that's if he hurts the team or the client, you may have to replace that person.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. This is Angela speaking, Thomas, what you just said. You really have to see what works best for the team. So I think that truly makes a good project manager to become truly a project leader. You're faced with uncertainties and changes all the time. So, yeah, that's... you have to adapt your real-life project world.
Yes. There's something else. I can think of a story. I was once working for an internet service provider here in Germany, and they were following Scrum, which was good, and they had to hire somebody, a new Scrum Master. So I looked at all these profiles, and the line manager was in favor of a certain person, and she's like, well, she is a Scrum Master, and she has done so many Scrum projects, and I think that's great. She's the right person. And I told him, it's like, you know what, I don't think that this person's a good fit. Not because of her Scrum experience, but that person doesn't have any project management experience. And so we're not doing project management and, waterfall, we're doing Scrum. It's like, well, yes, it could very well be that we're doing Scrum, us in our department. But all the other departments we rely on, they don't follow an agile approach. They're just like pure waterfall, and they don't understand the agile approach, not at all. And so you have to know something about project management, even though that person, the Scrum Master, is not a project manager. You still have to apply project management. At the end of the day, well, line manager hired this person, and unfortunately, this person failed. And she also came to me and said, sorry, I can't do this. And she realized, she was not very upset about it, but she also admitted that I can't do this. I don't have enough project management experience. I think she said, well, I'm very good in pure Scrum product development cycles, but just this is too complicated. So we had to let her go. And sometimes people say, Scrum, you don't need project management. I'm saying that's bullshit. Okay. Project management, is very important, and you have to know what project management is about. And me personally, I think that also the PMBOK, gives you a very good orientation to start with. Don't take everything literally. If you take it literally, tough. You may limit yourself again. The good thing, well, if you look at the PMBOK, there's the extension for software development, which is, there are quite a few agile elements in there. I know it because also I've reviewed it and I've contributed to it. So people say, oh, PMI is a strict waterfall. There is nothing, absolutely nothing in the PIN book, for example, which tells you have to do a certain way. Whenever people say you have to do a certain way, they have not understood the book, the body of knowledge. The same thing if you just take Scrum and say, oh, you have to do it a certain way, only this way. No, it doesn't tell you anywhere that you have to do it a certain way. It recommends that you do certain things, but it always tells you do whatever is best for your customer. And if you forget this, you're missing an essential element of project management or effective project management. No experience.
In fact, I was just reminded of a story that of someone that he started to do a project on a petroleum shipping company, and his project was a huge success, basically because he didn't. In this case, something that it's usually a requirement didn't happen. That is, that person didn't know the first thing about oil transportation. He went completely blind to that first to that project. He didn't know the first thing about petroleum, oil, or shipping, or whatever.
Yes.
So the devices that were built around that business, he wasn't aware of them. He didn't know about them, so he didn't comply with the rules that usually people just naturally followed. Now, this is usually what you don't want to do. You want someone who knows about the business, but in this case, it worked perfect for him. So,
okay.
Yes. I can relate to that.
Good, yeah.
I was just thinking that I have had the privilege to see you on a few lectures, and you do a pretty good job on them.
Thank you.
And I think you can adapt pretty much. Do you try to follow when you have a lecture to do? Do you face it as a project? How does that work? Can you tell us that?
You mean how I prepare a lecture, how I come with it, or how I present it?
Well, both, because the notion, what I think it happened at least once. I think that you were very well prepared, but you didn't do what you were supposed to do. I think you ad-libbed along the way.
Well, you have to do this, I believe. Yes, you can. Let's tell a story. What was it, 2 years ago, which happened to me in a lecture, and you can have dry runs, with lecture, but then again, it's a different scenario once you're on stage, which I love, because I like the adrenaline. I like to interact with people if that's possible. Sometimes it's not possible depending on the culture. For example, when you present in Germany, it's much more difficult to move the people because everybody's like very strict and they don't want to show any emotions. Like in the U.S., for example, yes, man, show me your hands. And everybody's like, yay, yay, and in Germany, it's like, show me your hands. Why should I show my hands? Like, no, I don't want to do this. They don't want to express their emotions, so it's different. And whenever I try to give presentations, I try to build in some uncertainty on purpose, so I also have a chance to learn or to grow. And as a matter of fact, my personal experience, whenever you present, you learn the most. That's the best learning experience. But again, expect the unexpected. For example, it was November 1st, 2012. I was invited to speak in London at the O2 Arena with PMI Chapter UK. And I talked about, what was it? Work-life balance. How to achieve work-life balance. Okay? And I talked about Zen and those kind of things. So I went on stage. Everything was fine. I was well prepared. And then after 2 or 3 minutes, the audience started laughing. And I thought, like, why is the audience, why are people laughing? I was totally confused, so I continued talking, and they still laughed. And I looked around, it's like, looked at my slides, and they were kind of like an autopilot all of a sudden. So every other second, they just forward to the next slide. It's like, by the way, what I just said, it doesn't really fit in this slide. I want to talk about the slide later, okay? So I had to stop the slides and go back and say, oh, this is the slide I want to talk about, And it was totally surprised. I was in shock, and it worked fine. In retrospect, it was a great experience. It made me think later on. People said, like, oh, what you did there on stage, that was pretty cool. How did you plan this? I said, I didn't plan it. Well, it seems that you plan everything. It's like, no. Then there's another thing. This happened to Alfonso Lucero. We was giving keynotes in Athens, in Greece. I was done with I talked about leadership principles for project success, and he had a different topic. And after about 5 minutes, power all gone. It was dark. You could see the exit signs in this auditorium. That was it. It was dark. Everybody, there were, I think, 300-400 people. Everybody looked at him. Like, what is he going to do next? And he looked at people. He just stayed there. He was very calm. And he said, well, today is a good day. And he just continued talking. The thing is, his talk, the title of his presentation was, Today is a Good Day. Okay? So he looked at what he did was he reacted to the overall what happens. Okay? And he saw a different situation, different environment, so I have to, master these challenges, and he just like, okay, things change. I do it without the slides, and works fine too. And when he said today is a good day, and he just continued talking, everybody went up and applauded, because like nobody expected this calmness and this pause, and this like the way he reacted, this flexibility was wonderful. And what's funny is like it took like 5 to 10 minutes, and the power went back. Actually, the people on the back, with the power and maintenance, etc., they were more hectic, and they almost got a heart attack. And they apologized and blah blah blah. It didn't really matter. Okay, so expecting the unexpected was good. And same thing in a project. You cannot plan everything. And when you give a presentation, there are usually always 1 or 2 things which do not go as planned. And that's a fun thing. The good thing is like you think, oh gee, it's really bad. The audience in most cases doesn't really realize it, and that's cool. So I can only encourage people also to share their experiences and to go out there and make this experience. It's a wonderful experience. You don't have to be a natural speaker, but you just like have a conversation with somebody, and you learn a great deal. People don't have to do it, but I think from a growth perspective, it's a great thing. Expecting the unexpected and just having fun.
Well, some people consider, for me, when I give training sessions, I plan carefully my sessions, but I usually find better things to do in the field when things are happening than what I initially planned. So my training plans are more a bit like a fallback plan than anything else. I'm prepared. I know what I'm going to do. I know what the session is about, what they need to get from it.
Yes.
And if I cannot find anything better to do, then I have my plan to follow.
Yes. Less is definitely more. Especially when you conduct a training, yes, you have your agenda you'd like to or you need to cover. And however, if you feel you're in a situation where you see, okay, it's more valuable and beneficial for the people attending, participating to spend more time on a given topic, that's good. So, in my future engagements and training engagements, I'll tell them this is the preliminary syllabus, this is the preliminary agenda. However, they have to realize if we come to a point that we all agree on it, it's better to spend extra time on a given topic and then we'll just cover something else later on. It's definitely better. I want to have this flexibility because they want to get something out of it too.
Do you find it very different when you're presenting for a small group of people, let's say, on a small session of a small chapter of the PMI, for instance, or if you're on the NASA Project Management Challenge? Do you find it different as a lecturer, as a presenter?
Yeah, it's very different. I always get a kick out of the more people the better. I love it. But it can also be more challenging to interact with them. If you have a smaller group, it's more personal. I think it's more difficult to give a presentation in front of, say, 10 people compared to giving a presentation in front of, say, 200 or 300 people. That's my experience. Because also, like, it's impossible to convince everyone or to reach out to everyone. There's usually, I'd say, maybe 10, 15, 20% who totally disagree with you, who are sitting in the audience just to make it more difficult for you. Okay, so when you have 10 people or 5 people, you present, you work with, and 10 or 20% are against you. It's tough when you only have 5 people because they can easily convince the others, and then all of a sudden everything's falling. Whereas you have a greater audience, with a bigger audience, I think it's a little easier to handle. Because also, I don't start giving a presentation or a training with the belief I will be able to convince everyone. It's not possible. I don't try to please or satisfy everyone. It's totally unrealistic. I want to give them something to think of, and if I can touch them, if they can take something home, that's good. I cannot expect them to believe everything I'm saying. Hopefully they will not. I want them to challenge me as well. But don't pretend that you can reach out to everyone, because sometimes they're not ready, or sometimes you are not ready.
I'm going to ask for your help and your capacity for adaptation, because we're past 50 minutes and we cannot go over 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would like you to talk about your biggest achievement. And I think that this could be for another hour or so,
yes.
But I have to ask you to be very, very synthetic on,
yes.
On talking about your biggest achievement, which is?
Well, I think it was the founding of the preschool where I live here, where a couple of years ago, when my youngest daughter then she was like 6 months old or so. My wife wanted to go back to work, and there was no reliable preschool for kids ages 1 to 3. In Germany, kids start kindergarten when they're 3, so we have to somehow cover the time from ages 1 to 3. And so one evening we met with other parents and we talked about it, we complained about it, and it was more like we have no idea what the solution could look like, but you know what, we admire the problem. And I was like, no, we can't do this, and we don't want to describe a problem, we have to do something about it. So anyway, and I said, what do you want to do? It's like, you know what, there's no reliable preschool, we start our own. And they say, yeah, what have you been smoking? So anyway, so no, we started an organization, so that's what we did. The agencies, they told us like it takes more than a year because we wanted to open a preschool in 1 year, and most of these initiatives they fail, and they were right that we did not achieve our objective of opening the preschool within a year, or not in 1 year. It took us 9 months, okay, to open this preschool. And then when we started from the start, we didn't have anything. We didn't have any rooms, no capacity, no trainers, no teachers, what have you. We had a need, we had a vision. And what we did, we shared stories of the future. How will it feel like? What is it going to be like a day in the life of this preschool for the kids, for the parents, for the people who work there? And we shared these stories so that people could relate to. And I think that was one of my greatest accomplishments, or helped accomplish. It was not just me. My wife and I, we were really driving it, but there was also a team behind it. This preschool still exists today. Actually has become really an institution in where we live. And we started with, I think, 12 kids. Now I think there's an institution for 50, 60 kids. So this is something I'm really proud of. And had nothing to do with work. Was very time consuming. But because we had the same driver, the same motivation, the same vision, we had a clear objective that really carried us all the way through. This was a great, wonderful experience.
Yes, and it definitely relates to you. It was a project. You followed your leadership principles in that. Yeah. Definitely, it relates to you. I think it's time to wrap up this interview. I would ask Angela now to ask you a few quick questions.
Yeah.
We're almost at the 60 minutes.
You've been in this world of training, teaching, coaching for a good while. So anything, what's your next big plan on the horizon? Any other big challenge you're working towards, or any other big project coming up?
Yes. I'm working what I'm calling an Institute for Project and Business Transformation, which is an institute which offers open conferences, open seminars, where you bring cross-functional teams together with various ideas, and you help them grow their ideas into projects. And you do this with a combination of outdoor activities, wellness, what have you. So the happiness factor is very important. I don't want to do it in a conference room setting, but I like to do it in an environment which is beautiful. I like the mountains, so I like to have this institute in the mountains. So it's kind of like, it feels like vacation, but it's also work, and you get a great return on investment because you have some fake ideas and you go home with real projects you can work on, which really excite you. So this is something I have in mind, and this is what I'm working on. And actually, this is the end of January. I will be giving a workshop on this very topic. It's called Chairlift Innovation. So it's a workshop, a 3-day workshop, or 3 one-day workshops, and it takes place in a ski resort. So I give them assignments. So for every time they ride a chairlift, they have a question to answer. And then they have fun, and they meet at the chairlift again, or at another lift, and then they get something else to work on. And at the end of the day, we have various project proposals to work on. So different approach. This is what my next new thing is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking forward to hearing about that and contributing to happiness of project managers and other leaders, yes. Hopefully. Yeah, let's see, another quick question maybe. Is there something that people don't know about you, but that has something that has really influenced you in the past you want to share with us?
Well, that's really tough. That's a really tough question, something I have to think of. Again, I believe that I actually talked about a little bit about the happiness idea, which I think is very important. And so let's leave it at this way. I have to think. You really surprised me with that kind of question. But you know what we can always do? People can always reach out to me and ask if they have questions. They can ask them, of course. I think that may be a little more effective.
Okay. Any advice for PMs, new PMs, or people watching this podcast?
Yes. Remember this one at the beginning. I talked about this one magic equation of project success, where I said, okay, project success. Is there an equation for it? I said leadership plus happiness equals project success. And this is something people, I recommend people to think about this. What does leadership mean? In my book, I give some answers. And there are other ideas for leadership too. What does happiness mean for the team and for you individually? What is it that makes you happy? Not something else. sometimes my experience is people have a hard time thinking, well, what makes you happy? And interestingly, and that's kind of a sad thing, and when you ask, okay, you can't not give me the answer to what makes you happy. Answer the following question: what makes you unhappy? What makes you sad? And then all of a sudden they have all these ideas. Okay, fine, and just the opposite makes you happy. That's fine, something to work on. Then there's something else. Also, young project managers or old experienced project managers do this. And you do this with friends. Take a piece of paper and an envelope. On this envelope, you write your home address. For you want to send this to yourself. And it is from you, so I'll also send your address at the top left. Then you have two questions to answer. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to accomplish professionally and personally? If you knew you only had to live for 3 more years, and then ask them to provide whatever that comes to mind for 15 minutes, collect the letter, hold it, seal the envelope, hold it for 3 years, and after 3 years, mail to them. My experience is like if you start thinking, what do you want to accomplish? Not if you knew that you could live for another day or 2 weeks or so, then I think it's obvious. But 3 years, it's a different time horizon. You know, it's like, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to accomplish? Professionally and personally. If you knew you only had to live for 3 more years. And then see how this relates your present job. How you want to shape your environment. Professionally and personally. I think that's very good advice for everyone. And that's a good exercise, but again, this is something you can do with other people. You have to be a friend or you can do it with an audience.
Yeah, I'm going to take that advice for myself and maybe revisit it after 6 months already. So, Luis, how are we doing on time? Any other questions?
I think we're over our 60 minutes.
Okay.
I could spend another hour interviewing you. Talking to you is just such a pleasure. But we do have to end this interview. However, I would like you to tell us who is the one person that you would like to see interviewed next on the Who Is program.
Well, I think it would be really helpful for the audience and very interesting to hear Alfonso Bucero speak from Madrid. He's a great speaker, and he has a lot of experience. He knows what it means to be happy. He's the author of the book Today is a Good Day, and I think he would be a really very good person to talk to.
Well, I have to tell you that Alfonso was interviewed a few months ago, and it was a great interview.
Well, we have something in common, but then there are other great people you can talk to. Of course, when you talk to Alfonso, you can talk to Randy Englund. That comes to my mind, and wonderful experience, wonderful people. And again, Alfonso, I have learned a great deal. Manon de Guerre, she's also a very fun person to talk to. She's very outgoing. So she's another person. I think she can share quite a few stories, and people can learn a great deal from her too. Okay,
great. All I have to do now, Thomas, is to thank you. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I have, and I hope that people will think the same about this interview. This was brought to you by the Information Systems Community of Practice of the Project Management Institute. This is your host, Luis Chiabra, and I'll be back next month to introduce you to another remarkable project manager. Again, Thomas, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.